everyone, and welcome to November's Topic Talk, How to Brand Yourself Digitally for the Job Market. I'm your host, Dr. Danielle Devers, Assistant Professor of Multimedia Journalism here at UM. Topic Talks are a new series started this fall in the Mass Communication program to better prepare students for careers before graduation. This month, we're discussing how your digital and social media presence can affect your job search, both positively and negatively. As more media jobs are relying on social media technologies and digital technologies, we want our students to best understand how to position themselves in the digital world when they're preparing for internships and careers. Helping us learn more about this topic, we have three wonderful alumni panelists. In studio with me, we have Randall Porter.
Hi.
Randall graduated from the University of Montevallo with a mass communication major and a communication studies/PR minor. Randall is a brand strategist and style enthusiast with a blog called Stylishly Social on therandallporter.com. The blog started as a way for Randall to showcase his style and his love of the city of Birmingham, bringing together those two interests and artists from far and wide. At the center of it all is fashion, of course. Randall is a huge advocate of how personal style carries power carries more power than people can realize. And he likes to showcase that through his Instagram and blog. Randall also works as a cultural curator for Be Him Now and is the president of the Young Professionals of Birmingham. Thank you so much for joining us here in studio, Randall.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now we have two guests here on Skype with us today. First is Morgan Alford. Morgan is a 2018 graduate of Montevallo. She currently works as the Associate Director of Campus Visit Experience at UAB and directs their social media content and creative communication for undergraduate admissions. Her desire is to implement social media in UAB's recruitment plans. This was the first step that led her to two different promotions within this year. Congrats, Morgan. At the first peak of COVID in 2020, she also accepted a part-time marketing position with a national nonprofit in San Francisco called Savor Life, where she works remotely with their marketing team and social media. She will be graduating in December as well with a master's in communication management and certificate in nonprofit management from UAB. Thanks so much for being here, Morgan.
Thanks so much for having me.
And our third guest today is also joining us through Skype. Reed Strength graduated for UM in 2016 with a major in multimedia journalism and a minor in public relations. Reed is a senior copywriter at Shift. He's also written about Green Day's discography, written and hosted a Food Fact web show, and penned countless articles, press releases, and corporate emails on deadlines at a moment's notice. Thank you so much for being here, Reed.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here.
Well, let's start out today with some general questions for our panelists. Of course, our topic this month is about the importance of having a digital presence when you're looking for a job. So why don't you each tell me a little bit about your experience with how you curated your digital presence, your resume, your cover letter, portfolio, and even your social media web pages to prepare for the job market. Randall, why don't you start?
Yeah, I don't know if y'all know, I actually worked at Montevallo 2 years after graduating college in admissions. So that was kind of an easy jump for me. But then I went to Good Credit Magazine and became the event manager and fashion editor. And the way I did that was, I built a website showcasing my work in the city and what I've done. And then I built my Instagram through that. And I showcase my personal and professional life because someone who's a creator, they want to see both. If you're going into a profession like business or something like that, you may want to think about, separating the two. Right. But I kind of just built mine based on what people wanted to see from me. And so.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that unique experience too. Morgan, talk to us a little bit about how you use your digital presence when looking for a job.
Yeah, so I actually got the help from the Montevallo Career Center to help me write my resume and my cover letter. And I actually worked with Randall as a student assistant when I was in college while he was working in admissions, which is wild. And then I applied and used some of my connections from Montevallo to apply to an admissions counselor job here at UAB. And that was really helpful from Casey Kilpatrick, who's now the associate director at Clayton State, also a Montevallo grad, as well as Audrey Crawford, Ashley Beck. All of them in the admissions office were super helpful. And then when I started getting involved in social, it was kind of just a hobby. And then it started to be right when I had started, they had taken away the admissions Instagram which I just started. So I was like, okay, I guess there's maybe a reason for this. And there was a really good reason. It's to help drive content to the larger platform for all of UAB, which was great because, I mean, if you don't have somebody to run a platform, then it's not going to do well. And then right before COVID hit, I was like, this could be a really great way to reach students. If you're familiar with higher education, more like there's less and less students graduating high school. There's less people in the country that are going on to college. And so we need to be creative. And then especially when everything went virtual, being able to push social, being able to do Instagram live tours of campus because we couldn't have students on campus, being able to do Q&As, like all of that kind of stuff was really beneficial. So it kind of just started into like the connections I formed from college and then just the passions that I had and just kind of continuing to push for more in the job that I was already in.
What a great way to utilize both campus resources, Morgan, but then also be creative in the ways that you wanted to push your brand and your client forward socially. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. How about you, Reed? As you know, a copywriter, obviously digital is a large part of that, but how did you use your digital presence to kind of land that position at Shipt?
Yeah. So, I started as kind of a straight journalist for a while, especially after I graduated I did an internship with a magazine, an online publication called Pace Magazine. I also was doing, a couple freelance projects here and there for AL.com. And, the thing is that I kind of had all of these stories on different websites, right? But I needed a place to kind of bridge them together. So what I did was I created a Contently that basically featured all of those articles in one place. So that way, when I did have an employer, I could just send them to a Contently link that had all those stories so they could kind of pick and choose what they wanted to see. And that's kind of my catch-all for a lot of my storytelling work. And I'll out myself and say that I have not updated that website in quite a minute since my copywriting career really started. But it just goes to show, I think as a professional digital storyteller, whether you consider yourself, a journalist or a video person or whatever, having one place where you can kind of put all of your work is just so essential because I think employers, more than having a good resume or a good GPA, want to see that you can actually do that work, right? Want to see those examples.
And that's something that we tell our students all the time, Reed, that particularly in a mass communication field or a public relations field, it's all about your work. It's all about being able to showcase your writing, your creativity, and your skills. And so while, education is so important, and I'm a faculty member, so I want my students to get good grades, but more so than that, I want them to come out with that real world experience, that content that they can showcase. So what were some of the things that you did while a student at UM that really helped you to be prepared for that? What are some things that our students can be doing that maybe worked well for you in your careers? Morgan, I'll start with you. I know that you were not a traditional mass communication major. You actually majored in psychology, I believe. So how did you transition not having those pieces of writing to be able to create that digital content?
Yes, and I've said this several times. In hindsight, I definitely should have been either a communications major or mass comm. Nothing against psychology at all. It was a wonderful program and a degree, but I definitely think that's more of what I use, which is why I'm getting a master's in it now. So a lot of it is connections. Like I actually, obviously found the admissions job through my work in admissions, and then I actually found my internship with marketing with Save Your Life through my sorority, like a sorority alumni Facebook page, by someone who lives literally in California, and then we became coworkers, and now we're like kind of friends. So I think it's all about connections and the way that you spend your time. Like even just being involved in college night, like all of that in that experience is really valuable. Whether it's a sorority or it's another organization or it's sports, I think a lot of it is the way that you like brand yourself, and it's the way that you present yourself to future employers. A lot of the, and now as I'm a hiring manager and working through like applications as we're even opening a position right now, it's all about like how you sell yourself to somebody. And that can be whether you were involved, you don't have to have direct experience in something in order to go into it, which I think is just kind of really exciting. I had to tell my mom, I was like, I'm just never going to have one of those careers that's like, I want to be a nurse, and then I'm going to be a nurse forever. Like, I'm going to be, or I'm going to be a teacher, and then I'll be a teacher forever. I was like, I'm probably going to have a lot of jobs with a lot of weird names that you're going to have to be like, what does that mean? I'll be like, well, I don't know, but here's what I do. But that's kind of exciting. And so if that really interests you, just getting as much experience as you can, keeping those connections, don't burn any bridges, maybe that senior year or, with those professors, and they can really kind of help you get to where you want to go.
Love that. And of course, your experience, Morgan, is kind of what Reed was speaking to, what Randall was speaking to as well, that we've all kind of jumped careers. My students know I was a broadcaster for 15 years, then went into nonprofit PR for 5 years, and I'm now here in academia. And I think the beauty of a mass communication degree, or even a psychology degree, Morgan, nothing against that. But the idea is that you get those foundational skills that can take you anywhere you want to go. Reed, I know that mirrors a lot of your story and your experience professionally. Talk to me about what are the skills that you got from your time at Montevallo that helped you as you were transitioning careers?
Yeah, and I really want to kind of comment on what Morgan said too about maybe keeping an open mind when you start your professional career, and just, if you have this idea of a dream job, but then you kind of get this other thing or opportunity that comes along, like, be open to it. You never know, that one opportunity could help you ladder up to that dream job. I would also say, in terms of my time at I basically lived, breathed, and lived inside of the student newspaper, The Alabamian, for all 4 of my years. And that was a really formative experience for me, because truly it was like my writing gym. Like, I wrote every single week, every single day, and I got better through sheer repetition and trying new things. And, overall, just really trying to build that portfolio story by story. And I mean, by the time I graduated I had, not a handful of stories to pick to show employers. I had hundreds, and I think beyond that, just the sheer volume of the work, I learned a lot about how to communicate within a team, if that makes sense, So if I had a deadline for something and I wasn't going to be able to deliver on it, what plan B, what can I provide on a short moment's notice? I think that's a big thing that employers want, right? Is just reliability and the ability to think fast. So those were just some of the skills that I learned from I mean, I think beyond mass comm, obviously, just that liberal arts education, being so open to so many different people and topics, is super valuable place for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And I really love, your promotion of the Alabamian. We always encourage our students to try to get that real world experience, whether that's here in the production studio with the Alabamian, through internships. It's really that real world experience that helps get you those connections, get you both hard and soft skills that you need to apply. Now, I know, Randall, you have kind of taken your own unique road, starting your own website, your own really business to help promote the randallporter.com. So where Reed kind of used his skill set to transition between different industries, you've created your own thing. So talk to us a little bit about that experience and how Montevallo prepared you in that way.
Honestly, the professors here helped me realize who I was and like how I could own that lane and own that space. Dr. Ford and Dr. Hardig told me if y'all know anything about me, I'm all about Mariah Carey. That's who I love. And they were like, you know what? If that's what you love, write about it, talk about it, do everything about that. And then it helped me become who I wanted to be. I created, the randallporter.com because there wasn't a lane in downtown Birmingham for gay black men to showcase style or fashion or anything like that. And then people were always asking, where do we go? What do we do? And so I kind of created that, and that's how BHAM Now reached out, and they were like, you know everything about what's happening, come join our team, And so it's kind of like I started here at Montevallo, didn't know what I was doing, was like, oh, I have to go to college because that's what I was told to do. And then I found the professors that actually, molded me and told me, hey, you're great, this is what you need to do. Yeah. And so that's kind of how that happened for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love, one thing that we try to encourage our students is find that lane. Find what you excel at, what you're passionate about, and those industries will open themselves up to you when you put in the work and you dedicate yourself to that. So I love that you're able to blend who you are with your skill set and make your own thing. And that's a real possibility for our students as well. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience now. Who has a question for one of our panelists, or all of them? Yeah, Dre.
Hi, I'm Jose. I'm a communication studies major. So currently, I relate to you. Sorry. I'm like torn between like what I really want to do, and I have those professors that's like telling me you're good at this, you're good at that, but at the same time, this is my first basketball class with academics, and now she's telling me like I'm a little torn. I'm trying to find my lane. Like this is like my last semester, so it's like how are we just able to just narrow it down?
So the question from our audience member, Yildre is, like most of our students, extremely talented at a lot of different things. And so sometimes it can be hard to narrow down those focuses and kind of pick your lane, so to speak. And that's kind of been a common theme for all of our participants. So we'll start with you, Randall. What kind of advice would you give to someone who has a lot of different interests and not quite sure where to take that professionally?
Now you don't have to choose just one thing. I don't do just one thing. It is very hard when people are like, what do you do? Like, a lot of people don't know what I do. But these days, you do not have to do just one thing. I think if you find the few things that you do enjoy and you know that you can make a living at, I think you stick with those. But I think you do not have to settle on just one thing. Be patient with yourself. Don't get frustrated. Like I said, I started out in admissions for 2 years before I started the blog, and then it just kind of went from there. And that's one of the things that I had to learn, is to just take your time. You'll get there. Everybody has different paths. But I think for me, it was a lot easier to be like, I don't have to choose just this one thing. I'm going to create this space, this platform for myself. What is Randall Porter? And then showcase that. And that's what I do every day. So,
Love that. Now, I know when Reed sent in his bio for Topic Talk, there was everything from Green Day to peanut butter enthusiast. Unapologetic peanut butter enthusiast, nonetheless. I've never met someone so unapologetic about sandwich shopping. I love it. So I think you probably relate to this a lot as well, Reed, where you have so many interests. How do you channel that professionally?
I mean, number one, being a writer and having a lot of interests is a great asset, because it just gives you so many things to tell stories about. But I think on a broader scale, get into a professional role, you realize, much kind of like what Randall's saying, you don't just do one thing. You know what I mean? Like, as a copywriter, am I writing a lot? Yes, I am. But I'm also thinking as a marketer, and I'm thinking, I'm kind of learning business skills along the way. But in the day and age that we live in now, I'm also, thinking about social media and how we kind of use social media strategy to advertise different things that Shipt has going on, different campaigns we have. So, I mean, you really kind of get a lot of experience in a role. So if you're worried that you have all these talents and you're like, I'll never be able to use all of these things in one role, it'll surprise you, honestly. I also think that there are a lot of opportunities when you get a job somewhere to say, hey, what this team is doing or what this person's doing seems really interesting. I wonder if I could take them out to lunch, or if I could even work on a project with them to kind of try that out, see if that's my wheelhouse. So I would say if you feel like that you just have a lot of interests, that's an advantage, not a disadvantage.
I completely agree, Reed. And I think, the beauty of a mass communication career, and a digital career at that, is that convergent media practice all utilizes the same skills as traditional journalism, as traditional PR and event planning, fashion reporting, or even admissions, right? But it's just using it in different contexts and different platforms. And so that convergent media style is something that our faculty excel at trying to help students adapt to, so you can find your lane and you're not pigeonholed into just one thing. And I think, Morgan, your experience speaks to that very well. You wouldn't typically look at an admissions counselor and say, yes, they are communication focused and they rely on social media and writing. But it sounds like that is a large part of what you do. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I do want to speak on what Reed mentioned, and I think that's such great advice. And as somebody who's now like coming up into middle management and actually having people that are like really a lot younger than them, which is terrifying, coming into to the workforce, and that people that look up to you, having somebody reach out to you and say like, I like what you're doing, or I'm interested in learning from that, goes such a long way. Like even as I'm working with, I advise 45 Trailblazers, which are our tour guides, and then 35 Green Team, which is our freshman student team, and our student assistants, and any of them that take that initiative and just ask to get involved or ask for help or ask for advice or just want to sit and see what I'm doing, it goes a really long way. In the recommendation letters that I write, or just the way that they get more opportunities, things like that. So I think that that's really great advice, even starting now in college, but especially as you go on into the professional field. And yeah, I think admissions is a really interesting job in and of itself because there's so many different facets of it. And like Randall is right, you don't just pick one thing and then that's all that you do forever. Like if I also like can technically say that I'm doing event planning with admissions events and like retreats and things like that. So if I ever needed to make a switch, I could do that. And now my experience is like an official marketing team member for a nonprofit. Like I could easily switch to that. Now, do I need to like learn some more things? Like, sure. But like being able to build on the skill sets that you're learning in the job, that maybe like event coordinator, event planner is not in my title, but I now have that skill set. And if I wanted to get a job that's heavy on event planning, I now know how to brand myself to like push on those skills and my experiences in order to get that job. So it's just a lot of like ebbing and flowing and learning and figuring out what you're interested in and what you do well, and what you don't. And it's also okay to not like something. And Brandon even mentioned, he was in admissions for 2 years. I was in admissions for almost, yeah, I guess 2 years. And it's okay to have just like a post grad job that is maybe not going to be something forever, but like we just need some money and we're just going to do that. And then we're going to build some skill sets and then we're going to go off and do something else. Like there's nothing wrong in having a job right after graduation that you don't stick with and you don't find your perfect dream job right then. No matter what you have, you can build from that, you can learn from that, you can make connections. And I think Montevallo does a great job of making those connections for you. But a lot of it's on yourself and how you take it on yourself and brand yourself.
And I love your emphasis, Morgan, on networking. And that's something that we really encourage our students to do. I think so often, particularly undergrad students aren't completely sure of their path and they're not sure of their place. And so many don't reach out. We have this wonderful alumni network, all three of you being Montevallo alums. And within 1 or 2 weeks of me reaching out, asking you to be here, yeah, of course, what can I do? I'm honored. Let me help out the students as much as possible. And I just want to encourage all of our students, reach out to alumni, ask what they do, ask to meet for coffee. Just like Rita's saying, that not only happens within an organization, but while you're in college, reach out and figure out, what are the types of people that I would want to position myself as? And we at Montevallo are so lucky to have alumni like you three and many other talented alumni who can share from that experience. So I love that. What other questions does our audience have? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So, if you ever had a minor that it is involved mostly on broadcasting, have you had any doubts on doing something different for a minor, or do you just want to keep on going with what you have in broadcasting?
So the question is really about, it's more of an advising question and how majors and minors can help students and their interests. Did any of you change majors or minors, have doubts about your majors? Morgan's like, I should have majored in mass comm or communication. So what advice do you have for students who are currently unsure about their program of study, and what advice would you give back? Morgan, I'll let you go first since you were like, yeah, my bad.
And I will say I didn't change my major because I was scary and I didn't, need to stay too long in college, even though I would have stayed forever. But I changed my minor like 4 times. And it also came from I had enough credits coming into school that I had a little bit of leeway. I ended up adding a full complete minor my senior year. So I ended up actually completing the human development and family studies minor. See, like I'm all over the place. But I started with a Spanish minor, but then it didn't end up like working with my class schedule. And then I also had a sign language minor, but then that one it didn't end up flowing, and I just ended up like trying to learn the language on my own and not having a minor in it. Um, Something I've actually learned in graduate school in my graduate program is trying not to find validation in academics as somebody who's always like excelled in school easily. And I'm very happy to have had that, right? Like great, good grades are great. But after being in school for like 14, 18 years, or you just find validation in getting a grade. And so when I went back to graduate school, I ended up taking a lot of time and like taking random classes and adding this certificate, should I add this certificate, et cetera, et cetera. And then I like was wasting so much time that now it takes me a lot longer to get a master's degree. And I think a minor is great. Is it like super necessary? I don't think so. I think an advisor is going to be more beneficial in like answering that question. But for me, I kept trying to add things because I thought it sounded cool or like I thought I needed it. But like my experience in social media is more valuable than a social media minor or a social media graduate certificate. My experience in higher ed is more valuable than a higher ed certificate. So that's my advice. Now, if you need it for actual job, an advisor will know that. It'll be more beneficial. But yeah, I changed my minor like 4 times.
And that is a lot of the advice that we give our students in advising is one, look at the industry that you want to go into, try to pair up your resume, your actual transcript as much as possible. But really at the end of the day, it's about building skills. And so you could take a random class, let's say in psychology, and that might help you learn persuasion and, audience mentality to help you in marketing. And so that's the wonderful piece of having a liberal arts education is you can take bits and pieces from all over, and it doesn't have to be specified into a major or minor. What about you, Randall? You have so many different interests. How did your academic career play out?
Oh man. Let's see. So I changed my major and my minor all the time. I tried to stick with the basics and get through it. I think, like you said, having a liberal arts degree in general was that's the way to go. So the fact that you're all here is a bonus. But like the mass comm and comm studies program in general, I think if I had to go back and do it again, I would double in both. Because I like both sides, and I use so many of different parts of the programs that I was just like, maybe I should have double major, but I was also trying to get out of college, But like you said, liberal arts degree is the way to go. There's no like rhyme or reason in my opinion if you have a liberal arts degree. So.
Yeah. And I really like that advice that it's about finding those basics, those skills that you can use across industries. And what we know from studies of industries and growth, one of the number one skills that employers of all types need is communication. And so having a communication degree can help you transition. And I like that advice. What about you, Reed? You pretty much lived and breathed here in Strong Hall from what I hear, but how did you deal with your majors and minors? How did you make those academic decisions?
Yeah, so I think I knew pretty early that mass comm, multimedia journalism was my North Star. I think I just knew that I was a storyteller and that was going to help me get there. But, my PR minor was actually something I added pretty late in the game. I want to say my junior year. And I'm so glad that I got that experience because I think what minors can really do, right, is diversify you a little bit, open you up to new opportunities. And lo and behold, my internship after college was for a digital storytelling journalism thing that I wanted to do. But my first actual job out of college was a media specialist for the university. So I actually went into PR as my first out of college, like full job. So I'm really glad I had that minor because I knew how to do press releases. I sort of understood some fundamentals that I don't think I could have taken into that interview without it. So.
Excellent. Well, I love that real world advice from three people who've walked through various programs and had different academic experiences. That's so helpful to our students. What other questions do our students have? Yeah, Ray.
So kind of going with this theme of you're not stuck on just one thing, how do you kind of balance all the different aspects of your job? Because like you've got, you know, you're a writer, you're a storyteller, but like there's all these other aspects to it. How do you balance all of those little fiddly bits?
The fiddly bits. That is the academic, scientific term for all the things that we must do. But it's true. You know, most communication industries require you to be a jack of all trades. You have to be pretty good at a lot of different things, right? And so, how do you find balancing those skills within your day-to-day activities really work and play out? Morgan, you probably have some of the most variety in your job description in terms of working in admissions, but also in social media and also event planning. How do you manage that day to day?
Oh gosh, it's hard, and there's good days and there's bad days, and I'm still learning. Like even as someone who's moved up a few times, and I am juggling a lot right now, especially within school. My boyfriend is also very aware of how busy that I've been, and my parents and my friends. So that's been really hard. But I think that like it seems kind of similar to undergrad when I was kind of like involved in college night and sorority and exec and best buddies and also like going home every once in a while. I think it feels a little bit similar to that, except I don't get to like not start my day at 9 a.m. anymore when I never signed up for 8 a.m. classes. And so I just think it's about organization, and I think it's about like mental health and checking in on yourself and making sure that you're not overloading on things. And I think it's just like taking it one day at a time, especially if you're in project management, seeing if you're taking on a new job. And my job is very seasonal, so I know that like when it was going to be recruitment season, when it was going to be yield season, or when it was going to be event heavy season. So in preparation for like what's coming up, what's something I can do now to like prepare myself, whether it's like emailing someone who had this job before me, or emailing or texting a mentor and asking for advice, or is there like if it's something literally technical like I do with my my marketing job, I've taken like random Google workshops, like like what's something in 5 minutes I can learn about Google Analytics so that I know what words they're saying in this meeting. So I think it's just trying to stay a little bit ahead of the game, but don't overload yourself too much. Don't stress yourself out and think that this is you have to do everything all at once, all right now. Just kind of take it a day at a time and prioritize what you need to be doing at the moment.
And again, Morgan, I love your reliance on others and learning from others, that continuous learning process within your career. And I think that that's so important to remember that you're not going to walk out of undergrad knowing everything you're going to need to know for the rest of your life. I mean, let's be honest, social media and digital as a career didn't exist when I graduated from undergrad, right? I mean, it did, but not like I wasn't. Anyway, I won't age myself on television. But I think it is a continuous learning process. And for you, Morgan, going back and getting your master's in communication management is one way to build those skills. Reed, you talked about going back and studying more in PR and marketing and trying to take workshops and learn from other people. How have you balanced all the various aspects of your career with your overarching goal of being a storyteller?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And a lot like Morgan, I haven't fully figured it out, but I think what I have learned, and this is really a lesson I think I've learned professionally in the last year, is that if there is any advocate that's going to kind of push your career goals, it's you. And you've really got to check in with yourself and say, what am I enjoying? What am I maybe not enjoying about my career? And just have an honest check-in every now and then, for sure. I also think, I really like what Morgan said about, working with a mentor or somebody. I am lucky enough to have a very people-first manager and boss who's very interested in my long-term career goal growth, even outside of Shift. And so I have really come to rely on her for, her being able to say, hey, what are you enjoying? And if there's something new that you want to keep growing on, how can we connect you and plug you into more projects that allows you to do that? So I think it's a lot of self-discovery, but I think it's also about honesty with yourself and kind of with the people who work with you.
I love that. Now, Randall, Reed and Morgan work within organizational structures. As an entrepreneur, that kind of just comes back down to you. You get to make the organizational decisions and how you manage your time. So for someone who freelances, who really runs your own company, how do you manage that?
Well, I choose one day a week that I do absolutely nothing, whatever I want to do. Mondays are usually that day, but I usually spend one day a week where I don't check my phone for like work things. I don't do any of that. I do it all Tuesday through the rest of the week, or I plan things on Monday. So it's like usually I'm at home in my PJs and I just plan things out. I don't actually have to go and execute them because a lot of my job is showing up and being in places and, photos and all that stuff. And I do events for like the summit and the Pizits. And so it's all about just like picking up day for me that I just, I settle into, and it's just for me.
I love that. And I love that all three of you have really talked about the importance of mental health and checking in, because this can be a very hard career. It is very taxing, particularly when you are younger and still trying to figure it out. And so taking that time to really focus on mental health and give back to yourself, whether that's by reaching for their education goals, getting mentors, or even just scheduling out time that is just for you. I love that is currently being built into our industry and expectations. So thank you for leading by example, and thank you for taking your Monday day and spending it with us. We are honored. What other questions do we have? Yeah, okay.
So I feel like most things that kind of align with mass comms require a really extroverted personality, I guess. How do you get by if you don't have that?
So the question from our audience member is that a lot of mass communication careers rely on social skills and really kind of being outgoing a lot of times. But we have many students who are great writers that have a lot of talents that are somewhat more inward and not as extroverted in nature. What advice do you have for students when they have that personality type in this type of industry? Reed, I'll start with you. Oh, no, I will not.
Sorry,
Reed is so introverted that he has dropped out. He couldn't handle that question. That's okay. No, we're hopefully getting him back connected. But Morgan, can you help us out?
Yes, sorry, I think it froze there for a second, so it must
That's
have
okay.
been both of us.
We got you. Oh, spoke too soon. So here in the mass communication building, digital presence can be very challenging sometimes.
Yes.
So Randall, I don't necessarily see this introverted question being directed at you because you are very much an extrovert. But from your personal experience, how do you see those types of personalities working into this career?
Okay, a lot of people don't know, but I sometimes get a little like, all right,
It's me.
Yeah, I am a social person, but I also have to have my own time to recharge. I'm one of those people that I give out a lot of energy, and but I also have to be filled up somehow. Yeah. And so I even think about getting up here and speaking today, or when I have to give a speech, and you can ask Dr. Hardick about it. I fell in front of all of everyone, and I'm just not your traditional extrovert, where people would assume that I like to be in front of the camera, which I do, but on my own terms. So, I mean, I think it's a learning curve and finding what works for you. For me personally, if we think about live things, they make me nervous. But if we can be somewhere where I can control, I'm a controlling person, so I have to have all the control. So if I can control the environment, I'm good, and I think that could work for people who aren't so outgoing. You can control it, get it the way you want it to be. I think that might be something.
And then how do you push past when you have an event like this that does make you somewhat uncomfortable, but you're not really showing it. So
Well, thank you.
how do you manage that?
Practice. I practice. I've done this a lot, and then I always think, oh my God, what did I do? I don't watch myself. So if you go watch me at Be Him Now, I don't watch it. I just trust the producers. I find people that I work with, and I'm like, you know me, you know what I want to look like or feel like. So just if I'm giving that energy out, then perfect. If not, just say, let's do it again. But I don't watch myself. That's one way because it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know. But I do it all the time. And people are like, you're so good at it. But I'm like, I don't watch myself. I don't know. And so that's kind of how I deal with it. And then like coming up here today, I'm like, I've done this before. You got this. Like, just don't have to give a speech or anything like that. Just speak from the heart. You got it. But that's kind of how it works for me.
And I love that you mentioned that within the classroom. I mean, you've failed in a public speaking for Dr. Harding, right? For one speech. But that didn't prevent you from trying again and continuing to push past. And I think that's one thing that for people who are introverted like me, and then having to do something public facing, it's really like push yourself past that anxiety and keep working on it. All right, I think we have Reed back. Reed, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, no, I am also much like Randall. I'm sort of a conditional extrovert. You know what I mean? I think I can turn it on, but at my core, I'm definitely an introvert, and I need to be refilled and kind of have my own time. But I think introverts, man, I really kind of think we have an advantage in this field, especially as storytellers. I feel like what introverts are listeners, right? They don't want to be kind of the center of attention all the time. Instead, they can really kind of hone in and ask someone else and put someone else in the spotlight and kind of collect those details. So I don't know. I use my introvert powers to listen and be a fly on the wall and craft the parts of the story that I know I need to tell. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's a disadvantage at all. I think introverts have an advantage.
And I love that reframing of that what a lot of my students and a lot of undergrads see as a weakness can actually be a great power. And that's not to say that our extroverted friends, don't have powers as well, but they have different powers that they can utilize. And so I love the idea of taking whatever you consider a weakness and working it to your advantage. What about you, Morgan? How do you deal with that, introvert, extrovert style?
Well, I will say when I was making our own like Instagram live videos and doing my own editing, and I was the one doing the videos, that was horrifying. It took me forever because I had to keep redoing the video because then I would watch it back. So if I could have had somebody else do the editing, I would have saved probably hours. But I think we are all our own worst enemy. I think a lot of it is mindset. I think you just have to realize like you are the expert in whatever it is that you're doing. And if you're not, then become the expert, right? Like if you're imposter syndrome, if you're like, why did I get hired? I'm not extroverted or I'm not whatever, or I don't really know what I'm doing. And how do you format an Excel sheet? I don't know. Well, you have Google, you have like a really great playlist, you have like some motivational time to write in a journal, like that's all the rage right now. And just like acknowledging that like you have this power and you were selected for a reason and you were here for a reason and you have more to bring to the table than you thought, especially as a woman. I don't know if there was a woman that submitted this question, but you just have to like take up space and you have to realize your worth. And especially as a young professional going into a workforce, you just have to take it day by day. And there's going to be bad days where you're very aware of the fact that you're at the bottom of the totem pole. And then there's going to be a day where you know something that somebody else doesn't know, or that they hire somebody new and you get to mentor that person, or you get to take ownership of ordering the Chick-fil-A for lunch for the students, right? And like that's your thing and you're going to do it really well. And then they're going to ask you every time to get the lunch, right? And then that just grows and now you're, helping with events and now you're planning events, right? Like it's all just baby steps and just it's a mindset thing. So figure out what works for you, and sometimes you have to flex and it might not be your favorite thing to put yourself out there and to stand up for yourself. But you just kind of have to do it and then do it and then go home and don't talk to anybody else and watch some Netflix and eat some chocolate and it'll be fine.
I love it. Great advice from all three of our panelists. So because we're talking about digital and social media today, Randall, when you were introducing yourself, you talked about like you've kind of combined your personal and professional accounts. And I'm sure that others have told you you really need to keep them separate, like your personal life doesn't intermix. So when we're thinking about how to advise students on what do you post, what do you not, what content is personal, what content is professional, and how do you negotiate that, particularly in your last few years of junior and senior year before you're going on the job market. What kinds of advice do you have about how to brand yourself digitally in a way that makes it uniquely you, but also positions you for professionalism? And I'll start with you, Randall, since it's the most difficult question for you, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. Because I do manage 3 other accounts, like for realtors, because I do social media management and consulting for a few other brands in town. And it's hard for them to like separate the fact of them as a realtor and them in their personal life. And because that's what people come to you for, is your professional life, not your personal. But there's those small little, so when I worked for Aviate, which is a fashion brand, I was the director of brand communication. And what everybody loved about Aviate is that we put little trinkets of our personal lives in it because everybody wanted to see the people behind the brand. And so I think if you put small little taste of your personal life, don't give them everything in it because people want to see and they want to know. They want to feel some connection to you. I think if you do that in the small, tasteful way, then it'll work out for you. I don't think you should put anything other than, like when I worked for Good Grit magazine, I would showcase like fashion and events because that's what my work and my life was, but it wasn't my true life, but it was the life that people thought it was. So that's the power of social media. You can trick the minds here a little bit and make people think that this is you and what you do all the time with little happy notes of who you are every day, I think would work.
And it's really about putting your best foot forward for future employers, particularly in those last 2 years, to show like, here are my skills, here's what I'm good at, and that is me, and there's nothing false in that, but it's presenting your best professional life. Now, Reed, I know you working in PR speak a lot in brand voice, you have to speak on behalf of your brand. How do you manage that professional writing with, how you present yourself personally?
Man, that's a great question. And I think to kind of Randall's point, that mixing is happening, and I think it's going to continue happening. Luckily, when I'm thinking of writing for my company's, social media, it helps when you work for something that kind of has your own personal voice. When I think of my company, they're very helpful and they're very caring, and they also kind of allow for some humor every now and then. We like some zing in there, and that's kind of how I like to communicate to people personally. So when I think of how to communicate as them, that comes a little natural. When it comes to me outside of my organization, man, it's interesting. I don't know. I guess I show my personal life, but then if I do a video or if I do an article, I share it on my personal account as well. And I kind of feel like it just gives a more holistic view of me as a professional. You know what I mean? Yes, I have a cat and I love her very much, but also I just did a video about mulled wine. So like, I want to show you both, right? One other thing I'll say though, is that I think with having a digital presence as a professional, it's so important to learn a little bit about each platform. So, go ahead and familiarize yourself now while you're in college, while you have these formative years with Facebook, with Twitter, with Instagram, with TikTok. Do not ignore TikTok. TikTok is not for kids anymore. It is a brand thing. You may as well go ahead and get used to it, because if you want to kind of work in that field, you're going to be doing all of them for sure.
Well, thank you for your promotion of TikTok. Now all of my students are going, okay, I guess I did have to do that video. Thank you. See, I love having all these people come on and say what the faculty members say, because they listen to you, but they don't listen to us. It's kind of weird. But no, I do appreciate it. And I think it's so true that you can't ignore one platform. A lot of our students don't use Facebook personally, but that may be where their brand or their audience or their client needs them to be. So being familiar in that area is helpful too. Morgan, what about you? How do you kind of balance being a professional And then also speaking in the brand voice of UAB, which, as you know, I've actually worked at UAB Medicine, which is a different entity than UAB, the campus. And so those brand voices are totally different. How do you manage that large structure?
Yeah, and for me personally, running two different social media accounts, both for like Summer Life and for UAB, my personal social media is trash. So I don't know if anybody else relates to that. Like, there's like several memes going around of like how my, brand Instagram looks and how my Instagram looks. Mine, not great. Just I'm not posting on them as much just because my time is just needs to be dedicated. From on social, I need to be doing something probably for them. Except TikTok, I have my own TikTok time, and that's for me to learn about home renovations. I don't own a home. Um, anyways, apart from the question, so it's a little bit different. I think this generation of people that are now moving into roles that hire the younger generation, I think more people are aware of social, and I also think people are more maybe forgiving and understanding, of different personal preferences or different personal opinions and how you post. So I think it just depends on the type of job you're going into. I think if you're going into content and lifestyle, then you need to, a little bit of it is personal. And that's why influencers are so big. Everything needs to be personalized. Everything needs to be like relatable. That if you're going down that path, you need to have a good personal account. If you're going down a business path, it does not hurt to have a good personal account. But I think that, like, for me, when I was applying for this marketing job, they asked like what I would write about something or how I feel, like what are my favorite websites, like write a copy of this, etc., a writing sample. And if asked for social media example, I would probably use the brand accounts that I worked with, right? Like I wouldn't send them my personal. So it just depends. Like, use what you have. So if all you have is your personal and you need to beef that up so that you can get a job, or use that as an example, then it's fine. But I think it also depends on which avenue and which career path you're going into. And also LinkedIn. I don't know if people use LinkedIn anymore or that's just me, but LinkedIn is a great way to like stay professional and post and kind of post like kind of cringy stuff, but it's like okay, it's on LinkedIn, and update your bio to look cool. But I'll say for social, if you're looking to get involved in marketing or anything, just the fact that you're under the age of 23, they're going to think that you're great. Especially if you're going into a job where it's like a lot of older generations, you could just say the word engagement and they're just like, like
Right.
it's incredible. If you want some like confidence in yourself, in your professionalism, just like go in there and say the word like reshare, or like say the words comments need more than likes, like save this post to boost engagement. They think that you're an expert. So I think if you're looking to get into an avenue and you're young and you just kind of play around in social, that's what I did, and that's a great way to kind of get you into further careers, especially in like the digital space.
Well, and I love how each of you have talked about how social media sites and digital platforms can be areas where you showcase your talents, where you network with alumni, with other people within your industry. And so social media and digital presence is something we all need to consider for our work and our jobs. So thank you so much, each of you, for sharing your expertise. Thank you for all of our audience members contributing today. I really appreciate it. Make sure that as you're thinking through this advice that you're talking to your advisors about it. Spring and summer registration is opening up. Find those classes, find those minors, the majors that give you these skills that allow you to know your digital presence and brand yourself appropriately. So this is our last topic talk of the semester, but be sure to join us in January for our next series. Thank you so much again, Reed, Morgan, Randall. Appreciate you sharing your advice and giving back. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.